Hi, welcome to this episode of Your Black World News. I'm your host, Roosevelt Mitchell III. Today, I am joined by two guests, Mr. Sunil Shropshire, who is the founder of Shropshire University and the president of the Academic Network. How's it going today, Mr. Shropshire?
It's going well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much. I'm doing well. And I also have back Miss Ayana Devine. How's it going, Ayana?
It's going great. It's a new moon today, so I'm feeling really good and rejuvenated.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And we wanted to have this discussion about Ayana's situation down at an HBCU, Jackson State University. Ayana, can you tell the audience about your story?
Sure. So I was in art class, art appreciation class, and it's not uncommon for me to speak out on behalf of Black history. In that class, I'm always interjecting the Black history behind a lot of things. Oftentimes, I have to correct him, but never in a rude way. I'll just be like, wait, one time he mentioned that the Eiffel Tower was the largest man-made building at one time, and I said, hey, wait, what about the pyramids? You know what I mean? So I'm always interjecting in class respectfully. And this day he was going over slides and it was just nothing but European art. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, all these people he's showing were influenced by Africa. Where are we at? This is a Black school. I don't have anything but Black students in my class. So I raised my hand and I asked him if he could, if he could show us and teach us more Black art. And he replied, it was not in the curriculum. Then he's just going to teach by the curriculum. And I was just like, okay, yeah. Well, it's kind of important for us to see Black art because that's who we are. And I explained, our history is different from your history, but we have to know who we are. You have to have that knowledge of self before you learn anybody else. And, he said, oh, I don't care anything about that and this and that. And I said, you don't have to care. I'm not speaking for you. I'm speaking for my family and my brothers and sisters to hear me. And, it diffused after that. It wasn't a big deal in class. I got a few write-ons in class. A few people were like, yeah, you know what? I feel you. And yeah, it wasn't a big deal. He didn't let me know after class that he was going to write me up. I never got a warning in class. He's never given me any type of, commentary that, I need to calm down in class because I'm not, like I said, I'm just like I'm talking to you now is how I talk to him. I guess he took offense. He went and filed charges for me for disruption. And the charge that he filed it includes like when you're like really, really disruptive in class, like when you're throwing things and just like stuff like that. So I'm like reading this and I'm like, whoa. And then I got put on judicial hold without knowing because he didn't tell me. So for a month, I didn't know until I went to go register for classes. They said until you have a judicial hearing, you have to you're going to be on judicial hold, so I couldn't register. I had the hearing with five people and the associates of dean at the school. And although they couldn't refute anything that I said, they added charges to my to the initial charge between the time that I found out about the having to set up a hearing and the actual hearing. And they didn't let me know that they were adding charges, but they added charges because I made a video about the incident. And so their biggest thing was they couldn't even talk about how about the disruption in class. The whole time they pretty much ignored the original one, because it wasn't a disruption, and focused on the fact that I said cracker in my video. And I said, wait, that's not a derogatory statement. That's a historical statement. What I'm referring to is the crack of the whip in which his people back in the day were whipping us. And so I just, I just pretty much explained that, and they were pretty much silent. They couldn't say anything. I had one sister with a huge, beautiful fro, beautiful Black sister, just trying to, oh, well, there's no excuse. So I'm just like, why are y'all offended for massa? I said that in the hearing. I'm just like, y'all are protecting massa versus a Black woman who's, doing a lot in her community. I'm a deputy general with the Revolutionary Black Panther Party. I'm with Respect Our Black Dollars. I'm with Peace by Peace. And these are all organizations or armies that are involved with Black people and the empowerment of Black people. So it was really a really interesting predicament to be in, and I'm really disappointed in Jackson State University for even having this judicial hearing.
Mr. Shropshire, as an administrator and from an administrative perspective, what is your take on this? Or what do you think about it?
First off, Ayana, I admire your courage. I admire your dedication to speaking about issues that you care deeply about, as we all do. in that circumstance. So I definitely applaud your efforts, and I admire your courage, and keep doing what you're doing. It's interesting because when she was speaking, I was just thinking of the general premise of higher education, and the general premise usually is twofold, which is to educate and to teach, and they're not the same thing. And most people think that they're exactly the same. I mean, when you're talking in class, you're producing dialogue that produces a resourceful impact on education. But the teaching part comes from that dialogue and turning it into, okay, now do we open this up for discussion, because everyone is not going to be on the same page, everybody's not going to be in the same book, but fundamentally we have to all be in the same library so that we understand that that dialogue going back and forth is, in its simplest fact, productive. So it appears in this circumstance that the faculty member or professor just had an issue with the dialogue, and that's problematic. And I mean, there's a B section to this when we talk about the whole process in which this was embarked upon. But I think in many instances when you have faculty members that have either some unconscious bias about a particular subject, or they think that you're infringing upon their areas of expertise, or they are just uncomfortable with the particular topic at hand, that they get extraordinarily defensive. So, and in that circumstance, when you have a defensive faculty member or a defensive staff person or even a defensive student, it can turn sideways pretty quickly. And it seems like it happened in this case. Dialogue from the standpoint is one that's protected under law. So there's nothing wrong with voicing your opinion, voicing any type of issue you have with a particular subject matter. That's what the foundation of education was built on. So it should be no different at Jackson State or at any other institution. The second issue I have is from a procedural standpoint. When I was an administrator at UCLA and Loyola and Stetson and University of Florida and all the others, there is a procedure that you follow, for instance, in the grievance process, whether it's student versus student, administrator versus faculty, faculty versus student. There has to be a process. We can't allow faculty members to just go rogue and decide on their own estimation what is threatening or what is disruptive. From what I heard, from what Ayanna mentioned, it was just a normal course of dialogue. It was no surprise that she had done this before. I'm sure it was no surprise that fellow students and colleagues chimed in on different subjects just as productively as you had. So I think what we're dealing with here is, one, an opportunity not to be recognized for what the student was saying as opposed to hearing what the student was saying. And then two, just from a procedural standpoint, she should have been given an opportunity to know from a system of awareness well before any of this exploded into any area where she had to go to any type of hearing. So I think there are some pieces that were missing in the administrative process where she could have been treated a little bit better.
Right, I agree. And as a college professor, how can you hide behind, as she said, the reason he gave her was the curriculum. Okay, we understand the curriculum is in place. So, again, as an administrator, Mrs. Shropshire, how much weight should we put on the curriculum as far as being able to hide behind it and saying, well, okay, this is the curriculum. And, I mean, who knows who made the curriculum? He's a white professor at an HBCU. He could have, implemented his own curriculum or, had that, passed or whatever and said, this is what I want to teach. Okay, that's a curriculum. So, they try to use that curriculum into not educate, right? So how much weight should be on the curriculum and how much weight should the professor hold in being able to alter the curriculum?
Right. Well, when I was in law school, and I told the professor, we had the back and forth, and as well as a number of my colleagues, and he said, 75% of your learning is going to come from these discussions. The curriculum is merely a foundation of what we want to speak about. If it were that easy, class would be over in an hour, because you could go through the curriculum and say, okay, this is what I thought, this is what we're going to learn, and that's it. When you start as a faculty member, when you develop a particular curriculum, mentally you're already thinking, okay, this part is going to spark a discussion which we then could learn this, and then we could learn that and that. So it's a volleying kind of a ping pong, effort that we have. So if the faculty member's contention is, hey, this was a disruption in the curriculum, or then probably the curriculum was flawed in the first place. So in that circumstance, some type of input that you have throughout the course of an actual class is going to further embolden that type of curriculum and that type of discussion. So, I mean, I think there's an issue with the front of the train as well as the back of the train. So we didn't get to the middle part, but the front of the train, as far as the curriculum goes, maybe there's an issue there where they should have been a little bit more cognizant that these topics would produce that type of discussion.
So what has transpired since then, Ayana?
Actually, the hearing, the decision is usually made to 3 to 5 days. I had the hearing December 1st. It's December 11th, and they still haven't come up with a hearing. I just feel like they've been railroading me since the beginning, because when I first went in there finding out about the hearing, I said, okay, well, who can I have in there? Can I have a lawyer? Because, I just felt like this was not right now. And so I feel like after they found out, oh, she means business, let's add on some more charges to her, which, by the way, all of these have financial penalties. And I could be paying up to $900 for these charges. And it's just really upsetting to me that, like, I'm still having to wait for the answer. I call every day. Ooh, 1, 2, 3. I call every day, and they still can't give me an answer. They just, like, BSing me every time I call up there. Every time I check my email, it's going to be in your email. It's going to be in your email. It's not in my email. I don't know what Jackson State is doing, but I did go. I didn't talk to the teacher, but on my final exam, he asked, like, what did you learn in this class? And I took that to really explain a lot of things. And I learned that some people are more sensitive to Black history. Apparently that's racist to some people, for me to want to know my own art and all of this. So I definitely took my final exam as a chance to really, in a scholarly way, express how I felt about this whole situation. Because, mind you, the teacher was always smiling in my face after he wrote up the charges. He was smiling in my face, asking me about Egypt, Kemet, asking me, symbols, because that's all I'm doing in class is I'm drawing, like, ancient symbols, and always something about Africa, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I'm still waiting on the hearing. I do have a lot of support from my community here, and I have a lot of people ready to, if they give me any penalty, to step up and help me out with this situation.
And that's fantastic. That's fantastic that you have the group of support. But let's speak about Mr. Shropshire. Maybe you can help Ayana out with this, or maybe you can just help me to understand everything that has transpired. Okay, now we are at this point. Okay, so what can be done in order to begin this broad conversation of, hey, maybe, okay, we have a white professor teaching Black art at a Black university. What can we do to change the curriculum to make it more Afrocentric, right? So who should she talk to, or who can we, discuss that with?
Yeah, well, in the first aspect, what was their response when you said, can I have some type of representation there? Can I have a lawyer there? What was the response to that?
It was, well, we have to be notified ahead of time, 24 hours. But they said, and even when it comes to the students being present, I would have to have a 24-hour notice. But they scheduled the hearing less than 24 hours before my class. Right. So it was like I really didn't have the time to get anybody from the class because of Thanksgiving break or whatever and all that. But they were surprised. But go ahead.
Well, my suggestion is to definitely have adequate representation, because as an administrator, you can talk all day long back and forth to students, and they look at it as a grain of salt and say, well, that person isn't serious enough to take action against us anyway. But when you step into the representation of someone who is external and just looking at a fresh eye, then things seem to happen a lot quicker. Charges seem to be evaluated a little bit deeper. Strategies, whether they be, background strategies to get this student back, that disappears all of a sudden when you have some type of representation. So that's one. And to your point, Roosevelt, I think it's a situation where students fail to realize how much power they have in the educational system. We've seen examples at the University of Missouri. We've seen examples at Missouri State. We've seen examples at Cal Berkeley, where students get together and they talk about the procedural aspects to establishing more representation through curriculum. Because that's really the operative word. I mean, how do you expect diverse persons to learn if you're not providing them the opportunity to learn about their particular culture in a setting where they shouldn't even have any fear of some type of retribution? As I mentioned before, there's a dual approach here that's significantly problematic, which is one, the curriculum, maybe that needs to be evaluated and incorporated into cultural awareness, diversity, racial sensitivity. All of that needs to be molded into the curriculum. And then the B part is make that curriculum foster discussions so that not only are students hearing the information, but they're also applying that information, which is what they will need after they leave the walls of the institution. So I think we focus a little bit too much on rigidity. I think we also focus on not being as flexible as we should. It's interesting because a number of times when I've spoken across the country, I said, there's one word that's the best word in education and the worst word in education. And it's the same word, and it's tradition. Because in its best sense, academic institutions say, look at how long we've been around, look at the established curriculum we have, look at how we've developed relationships. These are all about traditional aspects of our existence. In its bad sense, it leaves you so rigid of saying, well, we can't do anything that's outside of the traditional aspect of understanding that we have. I mean, some of these institutions have been around since 1896 and 1904 and 1920. And so if you're dealing with the same tradition from way back then, how is that applicable to a person sitting in the class asking you questions? It sounds like intelligent, very intelligent questions, comprehensive questions, in order for the faculty member to justify their position, which in fact, when they do justify the position, it opens up more dialogue in the actual classroom, and the professor cannot be afraid of that. But the power of the student is essential. So, Ayana, I definitely, recommend that you continue gathering the support of your students, gathering the support of students at other institutions who might have had this similar issues, and to gather support of faculty members, because if you look at it, University of Missouri's whole situation was fastly done when you had the faculty involved and you had the African American people in the community involved. I mean, so use all of those resources to generate a kind of a bandwagon approach of pushing things forward, and I think you'll be very successful at that.
So Ayana, I just want to be clear. So if you gather everyone around and the administration is willing to sit down with you all and hear you out, what specifically would you ask for as far as pertaining to that situation as far as the art?
I think that it should be mostly black art, but I think we do need to include some European artists. I think in that we need to explain that these European artists got all of their knowledge and all of their skills from Africa. And so I think that it's imperative that we do have a few European artists in there, Picasso, Da Vinci, so that we can let them know that, these guys went to Africa, they went to Kemet, and they got all this knowledge. They experienced all this African culture, the beauty of who we are, in Africa, and then they changed or adjusted their artistry according to that. And was it Picasso who had African masks, and after he got acquired these masks, he became very obsessed with these masks, and his whole art changed. And that's when his art became, more notarized, or more people noticed him in that way. But yeah, I think that it mostly needs to be black art, because this is a black school teaching black students, and we need to have knowledge of self before we can learn anything outside of us, so we can understand where we are in this world, where we are in our lives. And just like I said, just knowledge of self is like the first knowledge that we should be getting, not of people outside of us who got the knowledge from us anyway. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I definitely would say like 90%, 80-90% black art, African art, and then throw in those few people that bit off of us.
Okay, Mr. Shropshire, fair, is that equitable? Is that reasonable?
I think it is, primarily from a standpoint of the curriculum being inclusive. I mean, if it becomes problematic for students and administrators when the curriculum is exclusive of anything else. I mean, any 100% avenue is really not going to fly at an institution at all. But, what Ayanna had mentioned is, maybe it can be slanted based on the population of the student, the focus of the student. When we get into areas where we talk about finance, we slate it to finance. When we talk about areas of pre-colonial history, we slate it to pre-colonial history. So there's nothing wrong with the whole inclusive aspect of that being part of the curriculum. I also think that it's valuable to have that type of open dialogue with the administration at Jackson State to say, this curriculum is great, but this is not really what we're looking for. I mean, so you should be listening to the students to say, okay, what can I use as a student in moving forward? So when we developed the curriculum here at Shropshire University, we listen to the student. What do you want to learn, and how do we match it with established curriculum that's already out there? But also, how do we implement a process where you're getting the idea and you're getting the implementation of that idea to move forward in your professional life? So I think, Ayanna, in your circumstance, just start gathering folks to make sure that the administration is listening to you, because sometimes it's not how loud you speak, it's how effectively you speak. And when you have that army behind you of intellectual persons, that's a pretty strong army, and I'd go to war with that army any day of the week.
Because it sounds like Ayana, you already have a group of people, already supporting you, as you stated earlier. So yeah, you're right. If you just, get them on the same page and you all approach the correct person or the correct persons about what you all would like to see change, then you probably can get it done, because the power is in the numbers, like Mr. Shropshire has alluded to. And also, again, it amazes me how I go around to all these universities speaking and meet new people, and the mindset that the administration thinks that they are the ones who make the school. Right? If there's no students there paying tuition, then there's no jobs for the administrators, and there's no university. Right? So
Sure.
Right, you know what I mean? So Mr. Shropshire, so this whole mentality that many professors possess to have the audacity not to even want to have a serious dialogue with a student, it bothers me, deeply.
Sure, yeah, and there's usually there are two dynamics when you're talking about an academic institution. I call it the top down and the bottom up. When you have the top down, these are the presidents, the vice chancellors, the provosts, the directors who are implementing policy, quote unquote, pushing down. But when you push down on something, that squishes the student, whoever is underneath it, to the point that they can't really react fairly. The second part of that dynamic is the bottom up, which is, the students rising up saying, this is exactly what is needed. But from a student perspective, and I use Missouri as an example, when those students started to rise up, they were about 30 to 40% there. And then the faculty, staff, and administrators that agreed with them, they gave them that other 10 to 15 to 20% that finally made some type of action happen. I think it was an admirable effort all throughout. So, all across the board, I think students need to realize that most institutions should be bottom up, whereas now the general notion is that they're top down. We implement policy, you all are to follow that policy, versus
And give me
this
your
is
money.
yeah, this is what we want as a student base. And it's interesting because you mentioned about the money part. Imagine if an institution listened to students more, and students told other students, you're increasing your revenue by having more students enroll in your university because of the mindset that you've produced. So it's a circular aspect that if universities are smart, they'll be able to foster that aspect of inclusiveness, listen to the student, and attract more students in there, thereby becoming a richer institution financially, which should connect to the student base, more resources, more mentors, more study programs, more internship opportunities. It can't just stop at the top and actually disappear.
What do you think about that, Ayana?
It sounds good. It sounds really, really good. Unfortunately, like personally, I'm not. I'm so involved with so many things in my community. I'm not really active on Jackson State like I need to be. I'm gonna get there though. So I don't really know a lot of students. And like with Mizzou, they just needed the football players. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of revenue right there. Um,
Mhm.
and so I wish I knew some Jackson State football players. If you guys are watching, want to help me out, hit me up on Instagram. But yeah, like I do have a lot of people behind me, and fortunately, I have a very strong connection to the media. So hopefully, I don't have to go to the media but I will do it if they penalize me. I'm going to the media, and hopefully, I'm well received on the media, but the local news channels anyway. But I really hate to do that to Jackson State University because a lot of our HBCUs are losing a lot of money. But Jackson State is really known amongst the students for not caring about us. We don't have parking, but there's so much like faculty parking, and that could be open to us as well because it's never full. But they keep this thing like the students are beneath, and so there's a lot of like oppression. And I hate to say it, but there's a lot of student oppression here at Jackson State University is what I'm noticing because anytime we go to like financial aid or we go here, here, and here, like we always have to deal with this air of make sure you suck up to me or like just this bourgeoisie type of behavior. But there are a lot of great people. Go ahead.
Ayana, and I'm sorry to interrupt, is there a student senate there? Is there some type of student active body that not just focuses on throwing parties or going this place? And is there a student senate that can lock in and say, look, we have representation of X number of students that are interested in helping Ayana and bringing things to light as far as what her recommendations are?
Yes, there is, but like I said, I just haven't been. But now that you're bringing it up, I'm going to make sure that I do reach out because I do know some former presidents of what are they the sororities, and so maybe with that I'll be able to kind of hook in with the SGA whatever it's called, and see what I can do from there. But I know some of the people from the hearing are actually on the SGA, so I'll see how that is. But I definitely do need to get aboard that and maybe even see if I can be in there because there's definitely a lot of fixing needs to be done around here. But yeah.
Very good.
I thank you all both for the discussion, and I would like to give both of you a last word, starting with Ayana. Ladies first.
I just want to say that I still support Jackson State University and all HBCUs. Please, if you hear my story, please don't get discouraged about coming to Jackson State University or any HBCU because we do need to support our HBCUs. We need to leave all these other schools and try to support our HBCUs as much as possible, especially football players. If you're playing sports and you're like an amazing player, go ahead and go back to the HBCUs because I remember back in the day, the HBCUs used to have the best football players, of course, because they're black, the mighty black race. But yeah, I just want to say shout out to all my advisors at Jackson State University. You guys are awesome. I thank you for all the support. And yeah, HBCUs rock, but we do need some work. But all families need work, right? So yeah, thank you, thank you.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Shropshire.
Well, it's interesting because when I graduated from Delaware State College back then, now it's Delaware State University, they've gone big time on me. So when I was leaving the campus, there's a sign there that says "Each one teach one," and I always remembered that. And you're talking about graduation back in 1993 or so. I don't want to give too much away about my age, but it was back then, and I still remember that to this day because it's our obligation as a culture to make sure that we're teaching others based on the experiences that we've had. We're listening to others and kind of evaluating our own path. So just as Ayana, embarked upon her journey, and I really call it that because education is a journey. Never get, persuaded to act a similar way or to decide what's politically correct. you are your own person, and continue to be your own person. And I think people will have more respect for you by the fact that you are your own person versus trying to fit into a particular category or box. So I applaud your efforts, and it is our responsibility to teach another person to do that as well.
Okay, thank you all both so much. But before we go, I want you all to give people you all contact information just in case someone is watching this and want to reach out to either one of you.
Okay. My Instagram is Divine Stargate. My Facebook is Ayana Divine, and that's spelled AAYANNA DIVIGN. And my YouTube channel is Goddess Ayana. I also have a website, an online website for crystal jewelry and body products, and that's www.godpiece.com.
Thank you.
Excellent. On my end, it's Shropshire University, which is Shropshire, SHROPSHIRE .university. You'll be able to pull that up and see all of the degrees that we offer, 18 bachelor's and master's degrees. We currently have close to about 600 students or so. So we're enrolling in the spring as well as in the summer, and also provides a mentor program to connect students with not only the areas that they're teaching, they're learning, but areas that they could possibly be practicing in their professional life. So Shropshire University has all of our information on there, and I'll respond back to you directly, and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Your Black World News. And until next time, my friends, be blessed and be encouraged.